Amanda, 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 Samanda, Samanda, Amanda. Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's wonderful to see all of you here in person, joining us for Hanamatsuri today. As we were getting ready in the back, I could hear the voices, I could hear the laughter, I could hear the greetings. It's so wonderful to have an in-person service after 2 years of struggling through COVID. And I want to also take time to thank you for your support and understanding during those past 2 years. Over the last 2 years, I've been speaking to a camera. Now I get to speak to real live people. This is great. And then because today's Hanamatsuri also, I get to wear my favorite robe. This is a special robe that we use for special services. I used to wear them at weddings, but I was looking better than the bride, so I decided I needed to cut back a little bit on what I wear at weddings. But seriously, I'm so happy to see all of you here today. And I want to thank you for continuing to wear your masks and distance with each other. And we still want to be safe, but we do appreciate your cooperation. We'll begin today's service with an opening reading by our minister's assistant, Bill Woodford.
Morning, everyone. I'd like to, Reverend Zizeki is so right. We're so used to not seeing anybody when you do this. And I'm looking out there at all the familiar faces. I see Janice has got her spot. She hasn't moved. And I'm really looking forward to this day. So I have a really special reading today from Master Shen Tao. So please join me in Gasha. Sentient beings, each of you should accept what Shakyamuni has taught, has praised, has given witness to. It is certain beyond any doubt that foolish beings, regardless of whether they're evil or merit is great or small, for the period of the time, long or short, just singly-heartedly practice saying the name of Namo Amida alone. For up to 100 years, or down to not even 1 or 7 days, they will unfaithfully attain birth. Namo Amida.
Namo Amida.
Namo Amida.
Namo
Namo Amida.
Namo.
Next, we will have the chanting of the Kombucha again. This is the short chant that you find in your program called Gatha on Bathing the Buddha Image. And this is a tradition at Hanamatsuri to chant this simple 4-line chant. And the English translation is on the bottom there. And I will chant the first line, and then you can join in on the second line. And then I'll chant the third line, and then you join in on the fourth, etc., etc. We now bathe all the Tathagatas, whose pure wisdom is adorned with innumerable virtues. They cause sentient beings of the 5 periods of decay to be separated from their sufferings, and together attain the pure Dharma body of the Tathagata. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. as Queen Maya held the future Buddha in her arms on that fair morning in Lumbini Garden. Today, we conduct the Hanamatsuri service in celebration of that birth. The seeds of enlightenment are present in every person born, but more than ever during the tender formative years. Each human being requires kindness, patience, and truthfulness, and wisdom and guidance from our Sangha. May all of us gathered here with firm faith embrace Amida Buddha, guide the growth of our friends and family with steady and unfailing hands. And may we all realize the inborn powers of wisdom and compassion. Namo Kia Boots, Namo Kia Ho, Namo Kia So. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I go to the Sangha for guidance. Nammandalas, 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 Nammandalas. Nammandalas, Nammandalas. Now, if you'll all join us in the chanting of the Junidai. I'm sorry, I have to read names first of Shotsuki, observing Memorial this month of April. As I read your family name, you can come forward and pour sweet tea over the baby Buddha. This is March. Observing memorials in the month of April for Aaron Boone, Bob Daitoku, Nichi Eto, Seiko Fuji, Tamotsu Fujimura, George Sakae Fujita, Kazuo Fujita, Nancy Miyako Hirahara, Walter Hashimoto, Haruso Higaki, Kazuko Higaki, Hisa Hirano, Tereko Iwatashi, George Hoshiyama, Henry Ikeda, Itsuyo Inokuchi, Brad Roy Kaita, Yoshie Kaita, Setsuko Kajihara, Sanemi Kamimura, Haruko Kamitani, Takonoshin Kimoto, Kazuo Kikuchi, Helen Kobara, Akira Kodama, Henry Kooka, John Kurasaki, John Masao Kurimoto, Gunzo Maemura, Toro Matano, Nihei Matsui, Alice Matsumoto, Shio Matsumoto, Seki Mine, Mitsuo Misumi, Richard Miyama, Haruye Tagoishi, Dennis Nishihara, Eki Nitao, Frank Mitsuo Okamoto, Takeru Okamoto, Yoko Ono, Yutaka Sakai, Isae Sakakihara, Hina Sera, Tony Shimonishi, Tsunae Shingai, Yukio Shingai, Miki Shirashi, Francis Sugimoto, Masaru Sukekane. If you hear the family name, please come up and Kombucha. Kozo Suruki, Chikako Takata, Yasu Takei, Akira Bill Tao, Hisai Tao, Junko Toriumi, Kakichi Suda, Sunny Sudama, Yoshihisa Tsuji, Yukiko Tsuji, Naoko Ura, Sawano Ura, Nora Nobuko Ueda, Mary Uematsu, Roy Uematsu, Louis Waki, Chioko Yagi, Mitomu Yamaguchi, Asayo Yamanishi, Yonekichi Yamaoka, Rinzo Yonekura, Edward Yoshida, Hatsue Yoshida, Kazue Yoshida. Also want to invite anyone who's observing Memorial in the month of April and whose names we may not have called to come up and Kombucha. I can ask Tad Taco to represent families who could not be here today. Namados. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to ask you to please join us in the Sutra Chant Unidai, 12 Adorations. You'll find it on page 65 of the large purple service. I'd like to ask you to please rise. Join me in the Gatha, Namo Amida Butsu on page 174. life is fair, and sunlight is birthday. Where fortune smiles and loves are gone away. On let us pause with grateful hearts to say, Thank you. Now, if you'll please remain standing. Mr. Assistant Bill Woodenberg will make his way over here to read the Golden Chain, number 1, on page 15 in your large purple service kit.
Please join me in the golden chain. I'm linked in Amina's golden chain of love that stretches around the world. I will keep my link bright and strong. I will be kind and gentle to every living thing and protect all who are weaker than myself. I will think pure and beautiful thoughts, say pure and beautiful words, and do pure deeds. May every link in Amita's golden chain of love be bright and strong, and you attain. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you, Bill. So as we planned to reopen and conduct this Hanamatsuri service, typically we would have a guest speaker coming and sharing with us the Dharma talk. And so I asked my very, very best friend, Reverend Jerry Hirano of the Salt Lake Buddhist Temple, to speak today. Now, in March, early March, he came down with COVID. And since that time, he's kind of had symptoms that have lingered on. And what do they call that? Long haul kind of symptoms of COVID. But fortunately, through the wonders of technology now, Reverend Hirano is able to speak to us through the internet. So I'm really, as I said, Reverend Hirano is my very best friend. We've been on many adventures together, both here in the United States and Japan. More than just colleagues as far as ministers, but we are good friends. I consider him part of my family, like a brother. So I'm really thrilled that he was able to take the time to prepare a video presentation for us for our Hanamatsuri service. So I'll ask, I'll take care of that. You need to move the camera and set up here, so just give us.
Feet.
There's a connection.
You please join me in God's show. On the eve of the Founders Memorial Service, the great Kolombo Hippo Horus will rise up from the depths of the jeweled ponds of the Pure Land to shout Namo Amida Butsu as a reminder to all the children of Dembutsu's followers that they are embraced by Amida Buddha, never to be abandoned. Thus, this passage may also be known as Honko Hippo no Sho, the letter on the Honko Hippo. Listen to these words. Please listen to these words. Namanda. Good morning, everyone, and happy Hanamatsuri. First of all, I want to thank Reverend Shinseki for inviting me to your Hanamatsuri service. I'm happy to be here, even though it's virtually. It's been a really strange couple of years, and it's nice to know that we seem to be slowly getting over our various COVID isolations. There's something to always be grateful for. Even this COVID has shown us how much each of the three treasures are important in our lives, and not just the Buddha and the Dharma, but the Sangha is very important, something that we may have taken for granted before COVID. So I'm grateful, as I said, to be here for your Watsonville Hanamatsuri in whatever form. You know, I really enjoy Hanamatsuri. Hanamatsuri is, well, I would say my third favorite holiday after Christmas and Obon. In my memory, Hanamatsuri always reminds me of very happy times at the Salt Lake Buddhist Temple. Besides the service, there was a program for all the Dharma school kids and performances by students, plus even some of the adults around a little. And then we would have Japanese movies. And so the thing that I think about often is Twinkies and bananas, because part of the Hanamatsuri routine when I was growing up was during the Japanese movies, they'd give us all treats for, since I guess we didn't have popcorn. But these are some of my favorite foods. I would say Twinkies are my third favorite Hostess snack, because my first is the Hostess apple pies, and then second is probably those Hostess snowballs that they still have, those little marshmallow covered chocolate cupcakes. And bananas are my third favorite fruit, after ripe peaches and ripe mandarin oranges. And Reverend Shinseki is my third favorite person after my wife. Actually, he would have to be my fourth since I have two kids. So let me explain what I think is so important about this Hanamatsuri. That's my third favorite holiday. A lot of this was explained to me by an animal that I use called Horus the Honko Hippo. You can kind of see him in back of me with his other friends. But I'm going to try this screen share. I'm not really good at doing these things, but let's see if this works. There we go. Hopefully you can see me. Okay, see my screen. Okay, I'll be down here. But this quote I began with is actually something I wrote for my book, Teriyaki Priest. And it talks about this supposed letter called Onko Hippo no Sho. And it has to do with this friend of mine who I call Horus, the Honko Hippo. I don't know how many of you I know about Horus, but at my temples, I've brought him out a few times on Honko. The story was that Horus was a very grouchy hippo who didn't feel appreciated in life, like many of us. He was jealous of his more famous cousins. First a whale, and his other cousin, who probably didn't know a whale was related to hippo, but they are, the rhinoceros. He felt that he was just as grand and majestic as they were, but the world only saw him in these very compromising positions on Animal Planet, with his mouth open, just looking ridiculous. But anyway, this created kind of a complex for him. But one day, Horus happened to meet Santa Claus, taking a break, watering the reindeer at the ponds of the Pure Land, where Horus liked to hang out. Santa took that occasion to teach Horus about gratitude and being embraced in Amida Buddha's compassion. This caused Horus to begin bellowing, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, happy Honko, happy Honko. So Santa gave him the job of being the Honko Hippo. You know, and then one night, while Carmel and I were having dinner, she just asked me out of the blue, I wonder how Horus is doing during this pandemic. And I thought, well, I'll give him a call. And this is what Horus was explaining to me. Surprise, he does have an iPhone. He said that he just finished his journey of rising from the jeweled ponds of Pure Land during Honko and was now on vacation. He was hanging out with other mystical creatures that like to be around him in the Pure Land. So some of his friends were Fox. You may have heard of him, but Fox didn't want to be called Fox. He actually wanted to be called Pat. Because Fox, you know, he says it sounds too much like a swear word. Pat was kind of a unisex, and phoenixes are unisex. And they are able to recreate, not with female male, but by burning up and being reborn. So he thought he would be a great addition to Buddhist mythical creatures. But so he wanted to be called Pat, the Ohigan Phoenix, because he's able actually to shoot fire and water out of himself, just like the two rivers in the White Path story. His other friend was called Eve, the Easter Bunny originally, but she kind of didn't like that either, because she says, I don't really like chocolates or eggs, but because of the Romans, well, I'll get into that later. But anyway, then he introduced me to this guy. His name is Harry the Hanamatsuri Groundhog. And Harry is what Horus said is a mystical creature wannabe. His regular job was popping out of a box on February 2nd for Groundhog Day. He became a celebrity after this, especially from the movie Bill Murray's movie Groundhog Day. But he never made it to the big time. It was just like a one-shot deal. But he didn't like living in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. So that's why he moved to Pure Land. He likes to hang around all these other mythical creatures in Pure Land, calling himself Harry the Hanamatsuri groundhog. And I asked Horus, how did Phil get from Pennsylvania to the Pure Land? And he explained, the Pure Land is so far, it's so close, but it would take me a lot longer than this phone call to explain Pure Land metaphysics. And he says, if you really want to know, maybe you should take some classes or ask Reverend Dr. David Matsumura. He knows a lot more about this mystical stuff than I do. Anyway, Horus says he's been teaching a lot of his friends about Buddhism, and they all seem to fit actually quite good into their stories. Phil said that the movie Groundhog Day, even for Phil, shows how Buddhist that movie was. It's really a Buddhist allegory. And Phil claims that he's been a Buddhist since the time of Shakyamuni Buddha. All of these friends of Phil's, for instance, Eve wasn't originally even Christian, but we tend to think that Easter bunnies are Christian, but she says, Eve told Harry that she was a Roman goddess named Easter, but the Christians changed her story to fit their story. She doesn't even really like the name Eve. She says Eve and Easter have too much Christian baggage, and she wants to be known as Betty, the Buddhist bunny. She said her eggs could be used to explain the Buddhist Shakya. And her Easter baskets could even be used to talk about the Trikaya, the three baskets. So they decided that Eve would now be known as Betty, the Buddhist bunny. So all of these various friends of Harry, like Fox, they now hang out in the Pure Land with him. So I asked him to really explain to me a little bit about Harry, since today is Hanamatsuri. And he said, this is why we celebrate. First, he said there were the flowers at Hanamatsuri. And Phil, or Harry, we'll call him now since he doesn't want to be called Punxsutawney Phil, he said Phil was actually not even Phil. His real name was Pete, but it was a reporter by the name of William Swatsworth that messed up his name and changed Phil or Pete to Phil in 1952. So that's how he got the name Punxsutawney Phil. It should have been Punxsutawney Pete, but Harry didn't like either. He says, I'd rather be known as Harry the Hanamatsuri groundhog, since I basically invented Hanamatsuri. I says, what do you mean he invented Hanamatsuri? Well, Harry says that about 2,500 years ago, he was peacefully snacking in his burrow, and then suddenly felt the earth shake. He popped his head out of the ground, and sweet rain was falling. And he then sees something up in the sky. But first he thinks it might be a UFO or aliens, but it was twin dragons. Like I guess I heard that Reverend Shinseki got for me. Reverend Shinseki. I remember, but like dragons. And these twin dragons were carrying a baby. And this baby is set on the ground. And so when he sees this, he says, I knew something special was going to happen. He sees this baby starting to walk. So he digs underneath the baby and starts pushing up flowers so that the baby doesn't hurt its feet. So Harry said this baby takes 7 steps and points into the air and says, in the heavens above and the earth below, I alone am the world honored one. Harry told me that he was a bit disappointed with that line. So he popped up next to the baby Buddha and told him, hey kid, I tell you, you're special. I can tell you're special. But humility goes a lot further. And starting out in this world as the world honored one, I think it's better to tone it down a bit. And so that's when he taught the Buddha about flowers and impermanence, and how all things are impermanent. And so that's why we have flowers on our altar. Harry says that he and Ananda were always with the Buddha, and one day the Buddha was starting to give this talk. And Harry could tell the Buddha forgot what he was going to say. Like many times, I know I do, I have just in this talk forgotten when I was going to say something. So Harry puts a flower in his hand. But before he can whisper his idea to the Buddha, some guy towards the back of the crowd has this big smile on his face. This guy's name was Mahakashapa. And the Buddha smiles back. And now they say that it was actually Mahakashapa who started this thing with the flowers and impermanence and is considered the father of Zen. But Harry says he doesn't mind them not mentioning him since he considers himself Jodo Shinshu and not Zen. But Harry says, we still cannot forget the real meaning of these flowers. It's the whole concept of what I was talking about with baby Buddha, to cherish each and every moment in this life. You know, I called it carpe diem, or to seize the day. And Harry says that he's the one who even got that phrase, because he was wandering around the world after the Buddha died. It's kind of sad. Then in about 60-something BC, so that's a few hundred years after the Buddha died, he was wandering around Rome. He had hitched a ride with Alexander the Great's caravan, and that's how he got from Umbini to Italy. But in Italy, he happened to ask this guy, what time is it? And the guy told him, I am the poet Quintus Horatius Flaccus, but you can call me Horus. And who are you, little creature? And so Harry told him his story about the Buddha and the flowers, and that the importance of this is carpe diem. This Horatius was so happy, he came up with this quote, carpe diem, seize the day, rejoice while you are alive. Enjoy the day, live life to the fullest, make the most of what you have. It's later than you think. And so from that, Harry asked, wonder how he got from Rome to Pennsylvania and now back to the Pure Land. Well, Harry says that he came over on the boat with a guy named Christopher Columbus, had met Chris in Italy and just hanging out in one of his bags. And the next thing he knows, here he is in America. He ended up in Pennsylvania. And so this is the story of Harry the Hanamatsuri groundhog. And Harry wants us to remember him as Harry the Hanamatsuri groundhog rather than Punxsutawney Phil from Groundhog Day. So hopefully someday we can talk about other creatures who I enjoy. Let me try to get out of the screen sharing. So I'd like to show you one more. This is who I call Orlando, the one ostrich. He's actually a gaki. That's a whole other story that maybe we can share someday. You know, and I know that these are silly stories, but I think that we have to learn how to bring in some of our traditions with stories that people can relate to. For instance, we could learn from the Christians. Easter originally had nothing to do, as I said, with the resurrection. Most scholars don't even believe that the resurrection was during this time of year. However, there was a Roman holiday of spring honoring the goddess Easter. And Easter kind of looked like a rabbit, this goddess. So Christianity took those concepts and placed them into a Christian scenario. Now we have the Easter bunny, Easter eggs, Easter baskets, Easter bonnets. So without this type of creation with modern relevant concepts or characters to use as cultural vessels to fill with the liquid of the Buddha Dharma, how will our Shin Buddhist thought move into the mindset of everyday American life? I don't want to get into too much, but I leave Christmas is also a very Shin Buddhist holiday, and that's my favorite holiday. I've talked about Santa Claus, who could be actually Jizo Bosatsu, because Jizo Bosatsu has two little helpers that they don't talk about, named Shoaku, meaning pure evil, and Shozen, which means pure good. Right? And he wears red clothes. So maybe it was Santa Claus who reminds us of Jizo Bosatsu. You know, so there are all these kind of stories that we could use, but we don't. Hopefully, over time, these things will become part of our Buddhist tradition. But the story of Hanamatsuri, I know you heard it many, many times. And we all have our memories, I think, of their own Hanamatsuris growing up. This weekend, I'll be having Hanamatsuri in my temples. This year, we won't be having the children's programs like we still usually do, but I wouldn't be surprised if we still have Twinkies, bananas. So I hope that we can get together someday soon. I know this Dharma talk is a little strange, but it's about the best I can do talking over Zoom like this. And I look forward to getting together with all of you in real time, especially to have a drink with Reverend Jay and Jane in person, hopefully this year. So in closing, I'd like to have you join me in Gasho, please. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you, Reverend Jay. Thank you, Watsonville Buddhist Temple. Hope that we can get together soon in person. Please take care.
Okay, just wanna, okay, just wanna shout out to my good friend, Reverend Hirano, for that wonderful talk. He was telling me over the phone, he says, I don't know how this will work, but I said, just go for it. But I really enjoyed it. It was a great talk. So thank you, Reverend Hirano. And I'll be talking to him later today and extend our thanks and gratitude to him. Now I'd like to ask you all, please rise and join me in the Gospel Hondo San 2 on page 220 and remain standing for the closing reading by Minister's Assistant Bill Wood.
Before we have our reading, I'd like to say Susie Q's, Zingers, and then Twinkies. That would be my order. Please join me, Pragashio, for the closing reading. As you can see, this is a small reading and printed out, but this is very important, and I've said this before in the past. Before you speak, let your words pass through 3 gates. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? The words of the Buddha. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Thank you very much, Bill. That's one of my favorite readings that he shared with us in time to time. So at this time, I'd like to just make a couple of announcements. One is that the 3 temples in our area, Salinas and Monterey Watsonville, are celebrating Hanamatsuri this month. So next week, the Monterey Buddhist Temple will have Hanamatsuri. So if you happen to be in that area, join them for their Hanamatsuri. And the week after that will be Salinas Buddhist Temple's Hanamatsuri. But every Sunday here will be a 10 o'clock morning service with our minister's assistants when I'm not here. So I believe next week, Bill Wittenberg here will be conducting regular Sunday service. Next week, 10 o'clock here. So I hope you'll all join him for that service. Also, I want to remind people that in a couple of weeks, the temple here is hosting not hosting, but having a fundraiser with a Hanamatsuri bento lunch that you can pre-order through the office here and pick up on Saturday the 16th at 1 o'clock. Between 1 and 3 o'clock, you can pick up those bentos. Take out only. Okay. And let's see, are there any other announcements to make? Okay. finally, I want to thank Bill Wittenberg for being our assistant today. I want to thank Perry Yoshida for operating the camera. And this is also being streamed live on YouTube today for those who are still at home. And also, I want to thank Barbara Shingai, Ryoko Kozuki, Kim Yoshida, Joanne Kato, and Phyllis for setting up the altar and all the goodies that you're about to get on your way out. And I know there was a group of people who came yesterday and decorated the Hanamido. And I don't want to leave anybody out, but I want to thank them for doing such a wonderful job on the Hanamido. So in closing, we're going to ask you to all come forward and participate in the pouring of the sweet tea. Reverend Hirano talked about the sweet tea that fell from the sky on the day the Buddha was born. To reenact that, there's a little ladle there, and you just pour the sweet tea over the statue of the baby Buddha, Gasho and bow. And then you can exit out this door to my left, and some of our temple members have a little bag of goodies for you to take home. Okay, what can you, Ken, because
Yeah, I'd like to introduce some guests we have for our temple for our special service today. First of all, I'd like to introduce Jesse Rosa here.
Okay, thank you, Ken, and welcome. So much for coming today. Any other announcements? Okay, if not, please come forward and pour the sweet tea over the baby Buddha.